the Red House meeting
Yeah.
was something that took place in Strasbourg in August '44.
We just mentioned that, haven't we?
Yeah, it's basically the same time as the assassination attempt on Hitler, pretty much. There was a meeting going on where this is actually now been, it's an intelligence report from the American intelligence services, which there's a very interesting article in the Daily Mail all about this, where on the 10th of August 1944, various German industrialists met in order to arrange and start plans in train to ensure that there was a continuity Nazi movement, basically getting all of these securities, all of the wealth that the Nazis had gathered from all over Europe, and making sure that that was then taken on into the future. That was then Martin Bormann's job.
They could see the writing on the wall that they were going to lose the war.
Yeah.
That was Martin Bormann's job, and he went over to South America. He created something like 800 separate individual corporations, which he then invested this money into. It's all in Paul Manning's book.
It's all there.
The book is called Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile. Now, Paul Manning is not just any old fella. He was the CBS News European correspondent.
Yeah, he worked under Ed Morrow, didn't he? The famous American broadcaster. He was his man in Europe, or one of the men in Europe, reporting back to Ed Morrow.
Absolutely right. And he was, very well known to American audiences during World War II. He decided this was one of the most important things that he discovered at the end of the war. And he wanted to make sure it was all down on the record that Bormann had actually managed to make it over to South America and was very, very busy, bureaucratically setting up all these businesses which could then be invested with all the laundered money, the Nazi loot, and that his placemen could be put in charge of those corporations as directors. So this was then going to be another kind of Fourth Reich, but obviously without people walking around with swastikas on. These are just businessmen.
This Manning chap, did he have no evidence that Hitler also survived?
No, I don't think he goes into that.
He doesn't go into that at all. He focuses on Bormann, Hitler's
but if Hitler did survive, and there are plenty of people who believe that Hitler did survive the Second World War and also went to South America.
He's never really appeared anywhere in the history since the Second World War.
Can I say that Bormann, I think, is much better documented from source material that Bormann definitely did survive than Hitler. That is more of a disputed fact. And certainly, I don't think the two of them, if Hitler did survive, we were working together. No. This was a Bormann operation, and he definitely did survive.
This is where Market Garden presented a problem to this operation, this Red House meeting and Bormann's operation in South America. He estimated he needed 9 months to 6 months, wasn't it, to actually bring this about, to get these assets out. And the trouble with Market Garden was it was going to end the war by Christmas. Which would have stopped them finishing their project. And that's why you can see a strong motive for sabotaging Market Garden. And we've been into the potential sabotages that we've seen in the earlier part of the programme. And the question is, was it betrayed? If it was betrayed, who betrayed it? Was Prince Bernhard involved in it? Were other people involved in it? This is the big question mark which needs further research.
Well, certainly a lot of these Nazi companies in the Second World War, Nazified companies, that is to say, when you went in through the main entrance, you'd see swastikas all over the place and pictures of Hitler. A lot of these companies, of course, were involved in this Red House meeting, like Volkswagen and Krupps. All the big heavyweight companies of Nazi Germany were involved in this, making sure that there was some kind of method of getting the Nazi looted wealth from Europe going. One thing is worth saying as well is a lot of people think that BMWs are cool cars, don't they? Last year there was a documentary went out in Germany called The Silence of the Quants. It's never been shown in Britain, but it shows that the Quant family, who's a privately owned company, BMW, the Quant family actually made all of their wealth in the Second World War as a company called ABB, making batteries for German aircraft, German tanks, German submarines and this kind of thing. They transferred, and this is of course all under slave labour from concentration camps, they then transferred that wealth quietly at the end of the World War II into BMWs. BMW is basically still a Nazi company. The Nazi money has actually been taken and put into BMWs. And when, absolutely, it might sound incredible.
No, I'm not laughing at you.
Right?
I'm just about to say that is your opinion. And obviously, the opinions of my guests are not necessarily those of this programme.
But
I have to say that.
A lot of these German companies, to be absolutely fair to them, have put big sums of money into funds to give payments to the families of the victims of the concentration camps.
What about
Volkswagen, for example, has put lots of money into, and a lot of people who are members of families of people who are victims of the concentration camps have got monies from these funds. BMW, certainly at this time a few months ago, hadn't put a penny into that fund, even though they've been asked many times to do so.
I thought BMW was an aircraft manufacturer because their logo is supposed to be a propeller, isn't it?
Really? I never noticed
that
that.
four-sided, two blue corners and two white corners. Is apparently supposed to represent a propeller.
Let's be clear about this, because it was after the war that the Quant family, who'd made all this money from slave labour, bought BMWs after the war, not during the war.
Incidentally, Volkswagen was offered to
the British,
at the end of the war. We said no, thank you very much, which was obviously another big mistake we made.
Well, you know, possibly.
I just think that this hasn't come out in Britain. It's certainly in Germany. A lot of people are now very wary of the BMW logo and the brand, but in Britain we still think it's cool, man. In fact, they even build Minis, don't they?
Well, they do. They've bought Mini. They've also bought. Is it Bentley? They do own Bentley, don't they? Yeah. Yes. No, that's Volkswagen. They've bought Rolls-Royce.
That's
BMW.
Right. Yeah. So in a way, you can see what's going on here is that wealth that was made under the Nazi era is now finding its way into some of our big modern corporations, and BMW one of them.
Well, tell us about this Red House meeting, because we haven't really gone into that. So, who was at this Red House meeting?
To be quite honest, I haven't got a clue as to who was at it. It was set up by Bormann. But he didn't actually attend the meeting. It was set up. He was obviously busy working various other things, fighting the war presumably. But he sent a lot of industrialists. I think you mentioned some of the
That's
names
right. The
there.
industry and the economic might of Germany were there, including Krups and Volkswagen, etc. And it took place on the 10th of August 1944 in Strasbourg, which is, of course, it's somewhere called
the European Union is.
The Maison Rouge, which is the Red House in French, and I think it's probably called something else in German. But this meeting was, I think, crucial in starting the process during World War II of making sure that there was going to be a Fourth Reich and that the plans were in process. Everyone was going underground, they were taking the money out and they were going to create something new. And this is why it bothers me to see what the EU is up to right now. We've got Catherine Ashton, who's the EU's foreign minister, who nobody has ever elected, actually. She was the treasurer of CND. She's going around the world now negotiating...
The campaign for nuclear disarmament.
Yeah. She's going around the world now negotiating with the Burmese government about sanctions. She's feeling the collar of the Iranian regime, saying, oh, no, we're going to place sanctions on you. Who is she? Nobody has ever elected her. It's a bit like Chris Patton, who's the chairman of the BBC. The only time he's ever been, the last time he was ever subjected to public approval in Bath, he was removed by the public. He was kicked out of office, you know, and yet a lot of these people are now...
He was also in charge of Hong Kong, wasn't he, the handover?
It annoys me that these people who've been rejected by the public are then picked up and put in key positions.
Well, OK, let's look at that question. You know, what is wrong with the EU? Is it democratic?
No, it's not at all democratic. I'm sure
and yet
Dave
we
can
vote
tell you.
people into the...
Well, all the European Parliament, if you talk to MEPs, they will tell you, all the European Parliament can do is temporarily block stuff if they really get their act together to realise what needs blocking. And if they block it, generally it will come along, like these Internet Piracy Acts and things like that have been happening in the US.
Pirate Bay and all.
You know, there's one comes along, it gets blocked. 2 months later, a few paragraphs have been changed. The next one comes along, and they've got to be on their toes the whole time. These MEPs, in order the policy is not made by the MEPs. That's all made by the European Roundtable of Industrialists, which is basically big industry.
Well, okay, let's look at how the EU is laid out. Who makes the decision? How many layers does it have? And who makes the decisions? And
you've got the European Council and the Council of Ministers. Ministers from various European countries come together every so often, and they're supposed to thrash out what they want to achieve. Now, Tony Benn has explained this in detail. He went to the Council of Ministers when he was a minister, and his first request was that we open the doors to the press, make it a public meeting so we can see what's... And they all went, oh! In horror, we can't do that. And he found that everything was already decided before he actually, before anything could be discussed. And all it was a question of rubber stamping.
Well, who was it who decided it?
Well, that's probably the industries which really, I mean, the European Union is a symptom of a disease. And the disease is big business, wanting to control everything.
But we need to look at. But let's look at how it actually is made and how it actually is run.
Let me give you an example. Right, Philips Electronics.
Yes.
Okay.
Dutch company.
They hosted a whole bunch of people who were drawing up the single market agreement. This is back in the 1980s. And they, after 2 months, a whole bunch of people straight out of university who've been putting together this whole project for the single market, came along and they said, well, we don't actually think we can do this because but the sovereign governments won't agree to it. They've been, basically looked after by Philips and seconded to Philips. At the end of that period, they were then told, look, that's not good enough. Imagine yourselves to be the dictators of Europe. And this is where the policy is made. So the single market
is that a
programme...
true incident?
Absolutely.
I know that
it's
one.
absolutely well documented. So, this is what's going on, is that policy's being cooked up by these big European and American corporations behind the scenes, because a lot of people who are on the European Round Table of Industrialists making policy that goes to the European Union, they are the same companies who are over in the United States at places like the Council on Foreign Relations. It's not really as if there are two separate institutions here. The United States and the United States of Europe are very much the similar ideas and similar companies. The idea that Europe and America are really in competition, I think, is a kind of illusion that's been foisted on us. And I think, wouldn't most people agree that it's becoming a United States of Europe?
Capitalism, they say, is dead, except perhaps at a very low level in your local area. Capitalism's been replaced by corporatism, where you've got grand global monopolies. There's no room for competition, which is the real meaning of capitalism.
I mean, if we want democracy to survive, we've got to really fight for it, And I think that the big, powerful interests, this is the big corporations.
Being elected an MEP is just going to a talking shop where you can't make any decisions.
But
so all those, you get these people like
if you're elected as an MEP, you're not
You
going
can
to
make a decision, right, but you don't get involved in making policy. This is the whole thing. Where are these ideas coming from?
OK, well, hold on, Tony. We're going to go for a break now. If you'd like to text in your questions or comments to Tony Gosling and Dave Barnby, please do so now to 86686 with the word beyond. See you soon.